I'm going to go on to, hopefully, all right, there we go. So a lot of you have probably seen this diagram or something very like it. It was part of the sugar training at the Colorado Shines conferences, and it is also on the news.eclacolorado.org website, which has a lot of ecConnect and sugar-related resources on it. So I'll actually make sure and resend that link out. I'm making a note of that too, I'm realizing. So what this shows is I'm going to do kind of an overview, walk you through these shapes, and then we're going to look at each of these relationships in a little more detail. So Colorado Shines is a QRIS, it's a quality rating system. That's probably the one you're all most familiar with because you've probably got at least some providers who have been going on to Colorado Shines and you've been training them and possibly hosting trainings and providing support to the programs in your area that are using Colorado Shines. So that one, I'm guessing, is the one you're most familiar with. The Colorado Shines QRIS is built on top of a Salesforce database platform, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means. Then the Salesforce platform talks, that's what these arrows are, to the Sugar CRM database, and that is the council's database, that's ECLA's database, and that's the one that I am your point person for. And then on top of Sugar, that's what these big kind of triangles mean, systems are built one on top of the other, is ecConnect. ecConnect, like Colorado Shines, is an online portal for providers to use, so it's more public, providers can log in. The ecConnect is built on top of Sugar, and those are both ECLA systems. And Colorado Shines, the QRIS system, is built on top of Salesforce, and those are both CDHS systems. So I'm not going to do questions yet because any questions you have so far, I hope, will be answered in just a little bit. So this is the screen that probably looks familiar to you. This is an example of what Colorado Shines looks like. So we're going to go through screenshots from a few of these different sites just so you can kind of see what we're going to talk about how they relate to each other, and then just get this reminder of what they look like, so what we're talking about. But what this is a screenshot of the Colorado Shines, the QRIS website. When I took this, I happened to be logged in as kind of a test provider that's called Bill's Child Care Test. And as you can see around the home screen, which has the program profile and kind of this snapshot. But there's also, of course, the Colorado Shines application, the levels, the rating application, etc. So that's the Colorado Shines system. When we talk about QRIS, this is the website we're talking about. And then this, you might be less familiar with. This is an example of what Salesforce looks like. So one thing that I find is kind of an easy way to distinguish between these two systems conceptually and visually is, let's see if I can go back. Colorado Shines, to me, looks like it's something designed more or less for the public. It's branded, it's got this big logo and a color scheme, and it's got instructions. This looks to me like something that is maybe designed for somebody to be able to log in and just start using. If they're maybe moderately comfortable navigating websites, then this to me looks like something that they would expect to be able to use without a whole lot of help or training. Salesforce to me looks like something you would expect to get training on. So that's kind of, in my mind, one of the big distinctions between the two of them, and that is exactly what it is. It is a system that you would get training on. So up here, there's these different modules, and there's all these menus, and if we had the whole screen up and not a screenshot, there would be a whole lot of information that we could scroll up and down and see with all this little text. So this does not look like a system to me that you would expect a provider or anyone else from the public to be able to log in and start using this successfully, and that is exactly the case. This is a pretty full-featured database that you would get training on. So these are the two together. So Colorado Shines, I'm going to back up a little bit. So Salesforce is CDHS's database. It is a CRM database. That's Customer Relationship Management. And the Salesforce CRM system is made by a company that is called Salesforce, and they sell licenses for this. They sell them. Businesses can use CRM software to manage things like sales, their customer relationships, exactly what it sounds like, to manage sales and leads and marketing and support tickets and things like that. What CDHS has done, which is not at all an uncommon thing to do, is they have purchased licenses to use the Salesforce CRM database, and then they had programmers who they hired who built this Colorado Shines website on top of the Salesforce database. So that's this green triangle shape here. So there's a lot of customization going on here. As you would probably expect, one of the, say, custom modules that has been built into Salesforce is, for instance, the QRIS applications module. That is not something that comes with Salesforce. Licensing data for providers obviously doesn't come from Salesforce, or quality ratings, R&R functionality. So Salesforce is a type of software that is built to be very flexible so that anybody who wants to use it can build these, with the right kind of expertise, can build these modules to handle the type of data that they need to in the way that they want to. So that's what it's built to be able to do, and that's what has happened with these two systems. So when you are in Salesforce, you and I, council staff, are not going to be using Salesforce to make a lot of edits. In a little while, we're going to look at what you would use Salesforce to do along with the other systems. But it is important to, I think, to note that these are basically, especially from a data perspective, they are the same system. So Salesforce is the staff login, the CDHS staff login, kind of the back-end database, and Colorado Shines is kind of like a pretty cover put on top of it. So if you make a change in Colorado Shines, if anybody makes a change in Colorado Shines, that change shows up in Salesforce immediately. And to me, the interesting thing is that's not because the two systems are talking to each other and sharing information really quickly. It's because they actually are built on the same database. So it's like what the two websites are is two different ways of looking at the same information. It's as if you were looking through a window into a room, and then you went around a corner and looked through a different window into the same room. That's what these two things are. It's two different ways of looking at the same stuff. So the next screenshot is, this is an example of what ecConnect looks like. Just a reminder, ecConnect is the public kind of provider-facing portal that is ECLA's. So and as I have mentioned a few times, well, a lot of the detail about what you can do in ecConnect and how it relates to the other systems is exactly what we're going to talk about in a minute. And this is an example of what sugar looks like. And so for this one, so again, this is the ecConnect is the provider-facing kind of public portal. Sugar is the council is ECLA's database, and that is the system that councils are going to be using primarily. So as I mentioned, council staff can, and in some cases should, have Salesforce logins, but Salesforce is not the database you're going to be using primarily. But so first of all, Sugar CRM is the back-end database. So just like we were talking about on the Salesforce side, Salesforce is the back-end database, and Colorado Shines is the front-end database. It's built on top of, but looking at the exact same data. That's the exact same relationship that we have between Sugar and ecConnect. They are looking at the exact same data, but the ecConnect site is a little bit prettier. It is branded. It looks, hopefully, like something that you would expect to be able to use without a whole lot of training and support. Whereas Sugar, I think like Salesforce, this screen down on the bottom that has the blue bar at the top and then all these little text fields, that looks a little trickier. That is something that that you would expect, I think, to get some training on before you just get in there and start using it a whole lot. And that is one of the big pieces that ECLA is going to be providing to you, is exactly that, training on how to use Sugar. So that is ecConnect and Sugar. So on this one, so this is the two back-end databases. So what I did, again, with that same diagram with the 4 blocks, this is just the bottom part of that same diagram. So these are the two back-end databases, Salesforce and Sugar. And as I mentioned, this green arrow here means they're talking to each other. So both Salesforce and Sugar are both CRM software. Again, that's customer relationship management. Both of them are kind of big products that are made available and are sold internationally. They're used by businesses and all types of organizations in all types of industries. They're both very highly customizable. They're designed so that you can purchase licenses to either Salesforce or Sugar and then adapt it. You can build websites on top of it. You can build in your own modules to track your own kind of business. And actually, these two companies are competitors. And in fact, the work that we've been doing with CDHS over the last 6 months or so to get them to talk to each other, I understand is considered by some people to be a pretty big deal. I think we've heard from, at least from the people at Sugar, that having that building an integration between Sugar and Salesforce is not something I think that they've heard of being done before. It's a pretty big deal. So, but these are two. The point is, these are two of the very similar systems in terms of what they do and what they're designed to do. Salesforce, as I mentioned, is CDHS's database. So that's something that CDHS went through a process of looking at different database options for what they wanted to build into QRIS and figuring out which vendor they were going to go with and that whole process. And so what they decided to do was purchase licenses to a Salesforce database and then have their programmers build Colorado Shines on top of that. Similarly, Sugar CRM is something that originally a couple of years ago was purchased by the Denver Council, and after this a bunch of discussion with CDHS about building a system that could track council data, the solution that we all ended up with is that the Denver Council has made their Sugar database that they just built and they purchased and built a bunch of customizations on top of to handle council, especially quality improvement dollars. They are rolling that over to ecConnect, so that ecConnect is now going to be officially the owner of the Sugar database. And then through ecConnect, then all the councils will be able to use the Sugar database. So Salesforce is owned by, or the Salesforce licenses are owned by CDHS and paid for directly by CDHS. The Sugar licenses are paid for directly by ecConnect, and I think you probably saw the email from me not too long ago that we have at least verbal approval from CDHS that that they will be paying ecConnect for our Sugar licenses for the next year, for this fiscal year that just started. But yeah, so Sugar is the database that is ecConnect's, and then Salesforce is CDHS's. The people who use Salesforce primarily are CDHS staff, licensing specialists. There are modules built into Salesforce to handle licensing. The rating specialists, there are special modules that have been built, that CDHS has had built into Salesforce to handle ratings, applications, all those document uploads you might have seen that people need to do when they're applying for their rating. It's got the scheduler for that the rating specialists use to at Qualistar that are used to schedule the rating visits when sites are finished applying for their rating. And also there's a module that CDHS has had built in for R&Rs to use. So those are the different groups that are primarily using Salesforce. And I think it's important and interesting to note that most of these groups are using Salesforce in slightly or significantly different ways. But if you think about the type of data that is behind all these different uses, there is a lot of common themes. I mean, for one thing, all the data in both systems is very, very focused on the providers. But the nice thing about having all this data encapsulated and kind of combined into one system is that the data that the licensing specialists have access to, that they're updating, that they're using on a daily basis, is also available to the rating specialists. It's also available to the R&Rs and to CDHS staff directly. And then the Sugar database is and especially will be used primarily by council staff and coaches and not really any other people outside of that. So that's who's using the sugar system. We talked about council staff can, and in some cases should, have Salesforce logins, but primarily councils would be using sugar to kind of track and record the day-to-day operations that we're rolling it out for. And then, I wanted to talk about this arrow, this green arrow here between the Salesforce box and the Sugar CRM box means that these two systems talk to each other. So our programmers that ecConnect and DECC have been working with on the Sugar database, they have been working with the CDHS programmers for months now on this project of making these two databases talk to each other. There are two main kind of ways and times that the two databases talk. And what they do when they talk is they pass a lot of data back and forth. For up until now, almost all the data being passed back and forth is being passed actually just one way from Salesforce to Sugar. But what these conversations between the databases mean is that a bunch of this information that is used by CDHS staff, licensing specialists, rating specialists, and R&Rs is getting kind of sent over to Sugar, and then council staff who are using Sugar primarily and are in Sugar CRM every day, especially for the CCAP pilot. I know you all aren't in Sugar every day, but the CCAP pilot, the QI navigators and QI managers and coaches who've been working on that pilot so far, they have been in Sugar every day. And so through that, they get a lot of the same data that is in Salesforce. And it just gives you, number one, it gives you an easier home to be able to access it. Number two, there's a lot of things about quality improvement dollars, coaching hours and dollars that are assigned, who's eligible, which programs, which providers are eligible for which different funding streams, the calculations of dollars assigned, et cetera, that, the quality improvement plans, which people enter into Colorado Shines, that gets passed over to Sugar, so that's all available in Sugar. So a lot of this information, as an example of which providers are eligible for which funding opportunities, can be based on data that Salesforce and Colorado Shines already has. And so by passing it to Sugar, that means that we can manage that eligibility in Sugar kind of just using technology, using the database, using the website. Because we've got access to all that information because the two systems talk to each other. So the two main kind of ways and times that they do that, the really big sync, data sync, is what our programmers call the nightly sync. And so every night the two databases kind of call each other up, not on the phone, but they contact each other, and they exchange data. And that's where they just do a really exhaustive exchange of all the data that they share. They just kind of update all of it at once every night. It's actually about, I think, 3 o'clock in the morning or something, and it's set up to be happening at a time when hopefully nobody is trying to use either system, because there's a lot of data sharing going on, and so that takes up a lot of energy from both systems. So we don't want that to be happening kind of in the middle of the day when a lot of people are in the middle of using it. The other sync that happens when we get to the end, we're going to see a little screenshot of kind of when this happens, is called the on-demand sync. And what that does is when a provider is in Colorado Shines and they click through to the quality improvement tab that we're going to look at to start applying for their quality improvement funds, any of the CDHS administered funding streams that they might be eligible for. Salesforce, just real quick when they do that, it takes about 20 seconds. It seems kind of slow, but when a provider clicks the appropriate link on Colorado Shines, Salesforce kind of calls up Sugar and sends all that provider's data over to Sugar. And what that does is that's on purpose, that's a nice way to get really up-to-the-minute information. So if that provider just made some changes on Colorado Shines and then they want to use ecConnect, they want to use Sugar, then we make sure that we have all their information, because it would be a little confusing if you're in one website and then you click to go to another website, but it doesn't have all the changes you just made. You have to wait till 3 o'clock the next morning before your changes update. So there's an on-demand sync to avoid exactly that sort of. But there's also a nightly sync to make sure that all the information does get updated. All right. So we covered some of this, but in a little more detail, here's the type of data primarily that Salesforce and Sugar each contain. So Salesforce, which is the CDHS database, has exactly what you would expect, given that it's used by licensing specialists and raters and R&Rs. It's got that data about providers that those different roles need. So Salesforce, when they CDHS originally rolled it out, Salesforce was populated with, to begin with a bunch of data from the Trails database. And then I know they've been integrating, but I don't know exactly how, but they've been integrating the data with the data from Knackerware. And Salesforce also, because Salesforce Colorado Shines are the same database, just Colorado Shines is the prettier front-end public version for providers to look at. Anything that anybody enters into Colorado Shines is in the Salesforce database. That is where that information is saved. So if you or a provider logs into Colorado Shines and adds or updates information, that gets saved into Salesforce. The Sugar database contains the overview data about providers, so it contains a lot, but certainly not all, of the data about providers that's in Salesforce because it gets copied over. So some licensing data, some rating information, things like that, but not a ton of detail. So when you log into Sugar, you will not be able to see like kind of lots of notes from say a rating specialist, because that's not what I think anybody wants to be able to share. But a lot of the kind of results of that, or the status of a rating application, things like that, are available that you can see in Sugar. Primarily, councils are going to be using Sugar. You're going to be using Sugar to track some of your core activities around quality improvement funds and administration. So you can use Sugar to do contact management. So to kind of pull up a list of your providers that you maybe want to reach out to and recommend that or invite them to apply for different funding opportunities, for example. It's also where you can log coaching, and it's also where you can manage quality improvement dollars, like to purchase learning materials or et cetera. You can manage quality improvement dollars there. You can see the dollars that are assigned to providers for this is all for CDHS administered funding at this time. And it's also where you can manage the spending of those dollars. All right. And then this is really similar information, just slightly different again. So what councils use these two systems for. I'm going to start on the right this time with Sugar, because that's where I just left off on the previous slide. So when you reach out to providers, say to invite them to apply for funding, or to help them determine if they're eligible for a particular funding stream, again, just CDHS administered funding, then that is something that you can track in Sugar, so you can kind of keep track of who you reached out to, and if they are interested, if they said they're not, if they said never call me again, etc. You can that is information that you can track in Sugar to keep on top of, to manage, to keep records of. It's also where you can accept and review applications for CDHS administered funding. So Race to the Top, CCAP, ITQA, and today I keep forgetting the other one. And managing awards of funds, and then managing, tracking, and approving spending of those quality improvement dollars, including of the coaching hours, the value of the coaching hours via logging coaching. So then in Salesforce, what councils primarily use Salesforce for is to help providers with their Colorado Shines application. Because Salesforce and Colorado Shines are built, Colorado Shines is built on top of Salesforce. With a Salesforce login, you can, there's online instructions for this, you can, by clicking one particular button, which is my favorite button in Salesforce, and it says To Dashboard in the right place, you can actually view a provider's Colorado Shines, the whole Colorado Shines website. You can essentially log into Colorado Shines as that provider. Salesforce and Colorado Shines, even better, they know that you're you. so Colorado Shines isn't tricked into thinking that you are the provider, and it means the provider doesn't have to email you their password to get into Colorado Shines if they're having a question and you're not, you're having a hard time kind of figuring out what they're talking about or exactly what page they're getting stuck on. You don't actually have to go there and help them in person, and you don't have to have them tell you or send you their password, which isn't very secure. You can use Salesforce. You can click this magic To Dashboard button, and you can see their Colorado Shines website, their application, whatever it is they're having problems with, and kind of look at it along with them and support them that way. So as far as I'm concerned, that's the main thing that a council would want to do with Salesforce, is that To Dashboard button, which helps you support providers if they get stuck with something in Colorado Shines and you're helping them. And then, as I said, Sugar is a system that through which you can look up, track, manage, approve, log, search, export, all kinds of things. So that is the overview of how councils use these two systems. And then we are almost done with the main part of the presentation, and then we can have lots of questions. So this is the top part of that original diagram. So this is the two public-facing websites. This is the Colorado Shines QRIS. This is the Colorado Shines website. I'm still logged in as Bill's Child Care Test. And then this is ecConnect that we're looking at and how those two relate to each other. So again, that's the CDHS system and the ECLA system. And so you can see in this screenshot here, obviously I'm on the Colorado Shines website because it says Colorado Shines really big right here. And if you've been on this website, then these tabs look familiar. The home page is the Colorado Shines profile page. Application is their Colorado Shines application where they fill in things like the high needs profile, the classrooms, the three other tabs I'm blanking on right now. There is the information and applications for level 2. There's the level 3 through 5 rating application, which has a bunch of those features there, like uploading documents and the point structure guide. And then under the quality improvement tab in Colorado Shines, there's two elements. One of them is Build My QIP. If you haven't checked this out already, you can go online and do that. If you don't already have a Salesforce login, keep an eye out for the link that I will email out after this call, and you can fill out that form and request a Salesforce login. I'll also send you a link to the instructions for how to use that To Dashboard button, and you can check all this stuff out for yourself. But Build My QIP is the Colorado Shines page where a provider can build their quality improvement plan. But also under this quality improvement menu item is the QI incentives page. And when anybody clicks this QI incentives tab on Colorado Shines actually kind of, I'm going to use the term again, although it's not quite exact, but it kind of calls up ecConnect. And so this little kind of circle thing here and this text where it says connecting to your local early childhood council, there's kind of an invisible window here. And it's only invisible because both pages are white and there's not a line. So where this box begins and ends is not very obvious. And that's intentional, but what is inside this box is actually ecConnect. So that is within Colorado Shines, hopefully seamlessly, is actually an ecConnect page. And I think the next page is going to show you a little bit more about what that page does. But that is what this green arrow up here between Colorado Shines and ecConnect is conveying, is that these two are kind of hooked together as well, and that's where that happens. It's where ecConnect actually shows up as this little box page within Colorado Shines. And so here is another different view of the same thing. So I'm still on the Quality Improvement tab on Colorado Shines, and I'm still in this QI Incentives tab under that. And now this kind of, again, this invisible box, but where this orange text shows up here, and then the blue text talking about quality improvement incentives and program supports, that's a page on the ecConnect website. So that is, in this case, I'm going to go back one. When the website said connecting to your local early childhood council, what's actually happening during that step is the on-demand sync that I talked about. So this is when Salesforce, the database behind Colorado Shines, is talking to Sugar and passing a bunch of the information about Bill's Child Care Test to Sugar. And one of the pieces of information that it passed to Sugar is the completion status of the Colorado Shines application for Bill's Child Care Test. Sugar looked at that and found that this imaginary provider has not finished their Colorado Shines application yet, so that's why it's showing this message. Once a provider does have their application completed, and we've got the applications online, they're not live right now, for funding, then this window becomes a window into the funding applications that providers can fill out, and then that's how they will submit their applications to you, to council, for funding, for Race to the Top, for CCAP, for ITQA, and for the other thing I keep forgetting. And then there's a bunch of pages of this, which we're going to look at in a lot more detail on the webinar later this week. But that is how those two websites connect, is by talking to each other on the public side like that. All right, that is the overview. I am sure people still have questions. So, and what time is it? Is it? Oh, okay, so we have about 20 minutes for questions.